What's going on, YouTube? Here to do my UFC 133 predictions. You already know who it is. It's the kid, Intergalactic Brew. Should be a fairly decent card from the looks of it. Hopefully every fight, lives up to the build, so to speak. It's some very interesting but good matchups on this card. It's gonna be this card here. It's gonna be pretty good to say the least. Okay, so first fight on the main card is Roy McDonald, Mike Pyle. Yeah, that's it. I was discussing this fight with a good friend of mine earlier today, and I was telling him that this fight is going to be extremely close. I wouldn't even be surprised if this fight went the distance. I predicted that this fight would end, either like in the early second round maybe, because both of these guys, put a lot of physical pressure on their opponents, and they fight at a decent pace. So we'll see what happens. When you got like the fight going, 100 miles per hour. We'll see who gets the better end of the collision, so to speak, or who takes the more brunt of punishment. But yeah, Roy McDonald, he's an up-and-comer, has looked really, really good in his last couple of fights, most notably against Carlos Condit, a fight that you could arguably say that he was winning until Carlos Condit just pulled out a third win and was able to somehow get the fight down to the mat, get on top of McDonald, use that size and that length, and was able to TKO him in the last waning moments of the third round. Amazing. Well, amazing is an understatement these days. I would say, it was just an unreal comeback by Carlos Condit, because he was getting severely damaged by McDonald, standing up, and even a little bit on the ground too. But I guess Greg Jackson, it's true about what he says. He's just able to light that internal flame in his fighter, and I guess it just continues to grow to the point where the fighters just unleash this aggression, and this one last burst of energy to win their fight. So it was a tough break for Roy McDonald, but he still looked good nonetheless. Then his most recent fight, which was really surprising, it was a Spike TV preliminary fight, I believe, when he fought Nate Diaz. I forgot which UFC that was at, but I know it was recently. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see that fight, but from what I did hear, Roy McDonald looked just dominant, and he was a lot more aggressive, and he just basically poured it on Nate Diaz. I mean, he was flipping him up and down, and slamming him and jumping up on him and beating him up, and he was just basically the tougher man in that fight. I mean, he just pulled Diaz's, what we like to say in the streets, whole card. He pulled Nate Diaz's whole card. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man. But Roy McDonald, he has a good chance of winning this fight. Mike Pyle has to be extremely calculating You know, he's got to be crafty. You know, he's got to outsmart McDonald, you know, being that he's the older, more experienced fighter. And basically, all Rory has to do is basically use that youth and that speed and that agility and put that same type of pressure that he put on Condit in their fight and Diaz. And, you know, McDonald could get himself a very significant win here, you know. But then again, let's not count Mike Pyle out either, because, you know, Mike Pyle, you know, he's put together some good wins most recently. The John Hathaway fight really just completely captivated me, because I thought he was going to get, you know, dominated royally in that fight, because, you know, Hathaway was on a roll at that time, and Mike Pyle just completely just shut him down, you know. And I think he was eventually able to submit him in that fight. So that was a good performance by him. And then, you know, got another step up in competition in Ricardo Almeida most recently. You know, completely just out-wrestled and, you know, out-grappled him, you know, which was another surprise. And I was just like, well, god damn. You know, this Mike Pyle guy is serious. You know, he really is. You know, and also the Jesse Lennox fight, that was another prime example of what Mike Pyle is capable of. Put him to sleep, unconscious with a triangle choke. Who has ever done that? Damian Maia, eat your heart out. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow. He actually put somebody to sleep with a triangle choke. Unbelievable. But, you know what? I picked against Mike Pyle, you know, the last couple of times in his fights. When it comes to the upper echelon of competition. But, you know, Roy McDonald in this case, he's still young. He's still learning. He's up and coming. Mike Pyle is the more experienced fighter, and I think he's the more craftier fighter too. So, with that being said, I'm going to have to give this one to Mike Pyle. It's going to be extremely close, like I said. You know, if Roy McDonald can see the takedowns coming, you know, if he can stuff those, and if he could, you know, just use that footwork and the head movement and the speed and the youth, and just basically, you know, just, you know, put that pressure on Pyle and, you know, back him up against the cage and, you know, just unleash those strikes and, you know, even, you know, try to out-wrestle him at that. You know, I think Roy McDonald can win this fight, but I think Roy McDonald is going to want to look to knock this guy out. I think he's going to want to look to keep the fight standing up. I think he's going to want to stuff the takedowns, and he's just going to want to circle and just basically catch Pyle on the outside, while Pyle, on the other hand, he's going to try to close the distance. He's going to try to push Rory up against the fence, you know, beat him up with those short little punches and knees and elbows, and eventually try to drag him down to the ground and submit him. And I think that's what's going to end up happening, because, you know, McDonald's cardiovascular conditioning has really been an issue. We saw that in the Carlos Condit fight. You know, he got exhausted during the last round of that fight, and that's why Carlos was able to take advantage and get the best of him. So I'm sure Mike Pyle will be looking to test that, and I think he will. And I could see Mike Pyle winning this fight by rear naked choke in the second round. So I'm going with Mike Pyle. Next fight. This fight is actually very, very interesting. Brian Ebersol versus Dennis Hallman. Now, this is going to be the case of two seasoned veterans. One has had a lot more fights than the other, a.k.a. Brian Ebersol. And, you know, you've got another guy that has been around the UFC since the beginning of time, and that is Dennis Hallman. No offense to you, Dennis. You know, when I look at this fight, I see, you know, can Dennis Hallman keep his composure? Because Brian Ebersol what I noticed about him, his greatest asset is the ability to frustrate his opponents with unorthodox moves. And we saw a prime example of that in the Chris Lytle fight, which I picked Chris Lytle to win, by the way. But I never underestimated Eversole either. But Eversole, what he was able to do is he was able to throw Lytle off guard. He was able to take him down. I believe he even caught Lytle with a brutal knee lift to the chin that almost put him away, which was really surprising to me, considering that Chris Lytle has got one of the hardest chins in the UFC, let alone the welterweight division. So that kind of threw me for a loop. But nevertheless, Eversole was able to, get Lytle frustrated, and he was dominant, for at least the better part of that fight, and he was able to walk away with a decision. And what Dennis Hallman is going to have to do is, I think he's just going to have to, kind of come forward, and he's just going to try to have to get at Eversole early, because if he gives Eversole, time to get in his rhythm, and if he allows Eversole to get Dennis Hallman's timing down, then Hallman's going to be in trouble, and Eversole's just going to start unleashing, those unorthodox strikes, and it's going to take him down, and do that ground and pound on him, and all that other good stuff. So what Hallman's going to have to do is he's just going to have to be first. Use his superior striking. I believe that Hallman is going to be the better striker in this fight. Eversole will probably look to get the fight down, if he's smart. I don't think he wants to tango with Hallman up on the feet, especially judging by Hallman's last fight where he knocked his opponent out in the first round. So, yeah. So he's playing a game that he won't win there. But I think Eversole, what's going to happen is I think he's just going to use that unorthodoxness, if that's even a word. But I think he's going to, frustrate Hallman, and eventually Hallman will probably fall into that trap and get mesmerized by it. And I can see Eversole, taking him down and basically just controlling the fight from the ground for most of it, and I could see him winning a unanimous decision. So I'm going to go with Brian Eversole. But Dennis Hallman, could possibly win the fight too. Possibly. Okay, now down to the nitty-gritty, to the two fights we've all been waiting for, and personally the two fights that I am looking forward to most on this card, and that is the co-main event first. Vitor the Phenom Belfort going up against Yoshihiro Akiyama. I'm going to make this simple and plain. Akiyama needs to win this fight, and he needs to win this fight badly, either by knockout or by submission. If Akiyama loses this fight, I do believe he will be cut from the UFC, or then again, maybe not. It depends on how good he looks, even in defeat. But Akiyama really needs to win this fight, to really consider himself a legitimate contender at middleweight. As for Vitor, he just basically needs to be Vitor. Let the hands go, use the speed, hand movement, just basically try to be accurate and just catch Akiyama anywhere he can. He's going to need to use that takedown defense because Akiyama is a good grappler, and he will be looking to take Vitor down somewhere in this fight, and possibly try to score points. But what I actually see happening in this fight is I actually see Akiyama getting frustrated from trying to take Vitor down for the most part of the fight, and him basically just tiring himself out, and Vitor taking advantage of that and basically letting the hands go and just flurrying Akiyama until one of the punches finally lands, probably that overhand right cross that he likes to use, and he'll eventually drop Akiyama and pound away for the TKO. And I see that happening in the third round, Vitor.